Today's show is sponsored in part by Fulton Commons. We have had a co-working space there for a while. It's over in Manchester in this historic little neighborhood, and it's really thoughtfully decorated, like actual art on the walls, bright pops of color, these historic maps and eclectic furniture, and just so much gorgeous natural light. It really is a great place to be able to buckle down and get some work done, but also just like the experience while you're there. And all of this, of course, is just on the main floor, because downstairs is something totally different. It's a shared commercial kitchen, so fully stocked with equipment and appliances, storage, big fridges, prep areas. If you are just starting out in the food space and you've maybe outgrown your house but don't have it in you yet to go get an expensive lease on your own, this could be the perfect place for you to hone your craft and get to know other entrepreneurs. Also, if you are co-working upstairs, it can mean delicious samples. Check out Fulton Commons for yourself, for your small business, and for your food production needs. Visit fultonpgh.com to request a tour. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Heinz History Center and their newest exhibition, Pittsburgh's Hidden History. It is a cornucopia of curiosity, a magical menagerie of memory, and a little bit of this and that. There are flowery couches, relics from Kennywood, even a collection of shivs. If you listen to this show a lot, you know we are loving this. It is truly mind-boggling to see how the curators brought together such a wide range of rarely seen artifacts to tell Pittsburgh stories like never before. To buy your tickets and learn more, visit HeinzHistoryCenter.org. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, we finally have a state budget. Our national government is opening back up, and we are getting the scoop on why Senator John Fetterman and Governor Josh Shapiro's bromance fell apart. Plus, we've seen the headlines that Pittsburgh's 3-year strike is over, but y'all, they may have declared victory a little too quickly. We've got your wins, your losses, and a political ad that I think you have to hear to believe. It's Friday, November 14th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with CityCast Mallory Falk and Sophia Lo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel like we started the week this week really aspirationally, you know, like snow was on the ground and we were really thinking about ways to like not be sad about that.
I mean, snow is hitting the ground and immediately evaporating, but there was a wintertime chill in the air.
I don't know, man. I was driving around Highland Park and I saw a car with solidly 2 inches of snow on it. I don't know how that was possible.
Ooh, well, if any weather experts are out there, let us know. On Monday, we talked about staycations. So, like, how you can relax without making a big deal of traveling, you know, avoiding the airport, maybe avoiding, like, driving through the snow.
Really important this week. On Tuesday, we talked about the 13 types of people who maybe won't make it in Pittsburgh. One of my favorite of those types is like people who don't want to run into their ex. And I put that on social media. Y'all, the response I got is hilarious to me. It was like everybody like, yes, absolutely. You will see your ex everywhere. All of your exes for years.
Their exes. It's all just one tiny community.
This is why I think they should do a Love is Blind Pittsburgh, because it would be extremely chaotic. I'd be very excited to see that.
Yes, but make it gay.
And then on Wednesday, we talked about where to order your Thanksgiving takeout. Get your turkey before it sells out.
Yeah, the reservations for a lot of these restaurants that we talked about is coming up quickly. So if you have your eye on anything, definitely act fast.
And then on Thursday, we shared some tips and tricks for first-time homebuyers in Pittsburgh. We talked to a housing counselor because yet again, the national media wrote us up as one of the most affordable places for homebuyers in the country. But as we talked about, if you live here...
It's not true. It's not true. Like buying a house here is so hard.
Yes. Yeah, maybe if you're moving here from California, it seems really super duper affordable. But we got some old housing stock here, houses that need quite a bit of work. And we are also not paying California salaries.
And you know what ruins housing markets is when national outlets tell everyone to move to Pittsburgh. Like, I do want new neighbors. Don't get me wrong. I want our city to grow. But I don't want them all to take all the houses from the people who've been living here for 40 years.
Yeah. So if you're kind of thinking about trying to buy a house for the first time and unsure where to start or what resources might be available for you, definitely go take a listen.
Yeah, there's free money available. That was one of my favorite parts. We're going to talk now about the federal shutdown, which as we're recording this seems to be ending. But of course, the ramifications of this are going to go on for a while. And if you're looking for a breakdown or analysis of any of that, there are so many national outlets. I would love for you to check with them. For our purposes, we are going to talk about Senator John Fetterman and the, I would say, outsized role that he has played in all of this.
Since the beginning, Fetterman has been pretty vocal that he will not vote for a shutdown.
Which isn't a thing that anybody was voting for, to be clear. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
They were not voting. That was the problem.
But he did cross party lines and voted with the Republicans to end the shutdown. He pissed off a ton of people with this. And, also his new memoir dropped. So pressed for different reasons.
Yeah, just a quick timeline here. On Sunday, Fetterman and 7 other members of the Senate Democratic Caucus broke with their party and voted to end the shutdown without protections in place to ensure that people's healthcare premiums don't skyrocket, become even more unaffordable than they already are.
Right.
And then on Tuesday, his memoir, Unfettered, dropped. We are going to come back to all the drama around that in a second. But obviously, Sophia, like you said, a lot of people are really upset about his shutdown vote. Although, it's not that surprising that Fetterman of any Democrat would break with his party. He's done this before. He was the only Democrat, for example, to vote to confirm Pam Bondi as Attorney General. And even just last month, he was the only Democrat who voted to overturn these restrictions on oil and gas drilling in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. They had been put in place under the Biden administration. And again, solo vote on something that I think a lot of members of his party would not agree with.
Yeah. And of course, there's the conspiracy theory feels too strong, but this whole
probably just what happened.
Yeah. There's a thought going out there that the 8 Democrats, including Fetterman, that broke, they're the ones that aren't up for re-election anytime soon. So this was probably engineered to some degree behind the scenes. Although my question with that is how tough of a sell was this for John Fetterman? Maybe the other 7, but Fetterman, I don't know. I think this was always the way he was going to go.
Probably. And then to the memoir part of all of this, Fetterman's made a couple of media appearances to talk about his book and the vote. So he was on NPR earlier this week, but he was also on The View. That I think is the one that's getting more attention.
I forgot this show existed.
Yeah, the last time I tuned into The View was when my grandma used to have it on in her house, and she died in 2004. So this has been around for a while. It's an institution, I guess.
Yeah.
But so, Sophia, there was this clip that I think is going around a bit that I thought was worth playing. We're going to start it with one of the hosts of The View, Sunny Hostin, kind of being a proxy for the American people, or at least Democratic voters, and voicing the frustration of many Americans right now.
Well, Senator Bernie Sanders said the vote was a horrific mistake. Governor Gavin Newsom called it pathetic and a surrender. Poll after poll found more Americans on both sides of the aisle blaming Republicans. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene blamed the GOP. As you mentioned, Democrats had big wins last week, so you had momentum. Why give in now? Why bring a butter knife to a gunfight? Are you willing to gamble that the GOP will negotiate on health care in good faith once the government reopens? Because if that gamble is wrong, 500,000 Pennsylvanians that you represent, their health care costs will skyrocket if you are wrong. And I believe you are wrong.
Well, first of all, MTG is quite literally the last person in America that I'm going to take advice or to get their kinds of my leadership and values from. And now if Democrats are celebrating crazy pants like that, then that's on them. And now I don't need a lecture. I don't need a lecture from whether it's Bernie or the governor in California, because they are representing very deep blue kinds of populations. And a lot of those things were part of the extreme. And now remember, what really needs to win, the big win, is involving my state and other states and those things.
Well, he sure didn't answer the question.
Does this keep going? Is that the end?
It keeps going on kind of in this vein for a little bit. He does start talking about the effects of like the pause on Snap is having on people. But eventually, like I said, I have not watched The View since 2004, so I don't know how often this happens. But like Whoopi Goldberg just at some point steps in and interrupts him to say like they've got to go to commercial break. He's got to start talking. And when they come back, they just pivot to his memoir.
Sorry, I'm really still stuck on and now remember what needs to win. The big win is involving my state. He never says a win. I'm very confused.
Yeah, and as if deep blue voters are the only ones with health care. That's not an answer. That's not even a response.
Yeah, in some ways, it almost seems like Whoopi Goldberg saves him from himself by telling him he's got to cut it short.
Right.
Fetterman did have a stroke, so I don't fully know whether he was trying to evade the question or his brain just needed a minute to kind of catch up and get to his answer. But either way, like I said, they went to break, and when they came back, they were on to the next topic.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear this, though, like it reminds me of what else was in that bill, right? So like the Senate is the one who passed this bill that like ultimately led to the end of the shutdown. So that was, he's a crucial part of that. But I missed this in the run up to that they'd added an amendment at the 11th hour that makes hemp-derived THC illegal. And I feel like we should...
so random in the midst of everything else happening.
We should talk about that. I am shook that John Fetterman, of all people, the patron saint of legalizing cannabis in Pennsylvania, would vote for that. Like, to me, that should have been a full stop moment for him.
Before I moved to Pennsylvania, the only things I knew about him was likes to wear hoodies, pro-legalizing cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, his wife has been on the cover of several cannabis magazines. I mean, he made it his entire personality when he was the lieutenant governor, did an entire 67-county tour on it.
Whoa.
I think I went to 3 of those meetings. There was a big 2-day conference here in Pittsburgh about it, and he was so aggressive. Like, it was one of the first times that I had seen him outside the confines of his role as the mayor of Braddock, which is where he got his start, because that's how I had mostly talked to him in the past. And then he came here as lieutenant governor, and I mean, I think it is fair to say he was kind of bullying to people on stage, talking about how this is obvious. This is the obvious right choice for Pennsylvania to fully legalize, that everything should be on the table. We should be able to tax it. It should be available for healthcare. I know he's flipped on a lot of things lately, but I gotta say, cannabis, hemp-derived THC, that one is a new level.
I think supporting Israel has supplanted legalizing cannabis as like his number one priority.
And you may be right. I mean, I haven't seen any local or national reporting on any of this talking about that connection, like how much he supported cannabis and THC and now voting for this. If you are a reporter or an editor out there and or you have the time to chase this, please let us know. We would love to share that.
Our email is pittsburgh@citycast.fm. But I have seen a ton of headlines about, this last minute amendment from like the hemp industry side, and they are flipping out because this would effectively just kill their business, because no more Delta 8, no more of like the hemp derived gummies we've all seen ads about on Instagram. Like a lot of like the functional beverages will be banned. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. This seems like a step back for legalization in Pennsylvania and nationwide.
And I don't understand why. Like, why now?
I don't know. Like, I know some people who have tried Delta 8 and like had not great experiences. I know it's
regulation,
not like federal.
Sure.
Yeah, right. It's like more of an issue about it not being regulated. And it seems like a better step would be regulation, not a ban, like you said. I don't know.
And not shoving it in at the 11th hour to a budget bill. I don't get it.
Anyway, like we've said, Fetterman was not just making these appearances to defend his vote, but also to promote his new memoir, Unfettered. It dropped Tuesday. Reviews are out. And I got to say, they are not exactly glowing. Can I share a couple examples with you?
Yes, I've been waiting for this.
So the Washington Post review, the headline is, John Fetterman makes a case for himself. It's not very convincing.
Oh, no.
And then the New York Times ends its review with these lines. Anyone who has experienced depression will probably recognize the overgeneralization, the binary thinking, the closed loop of self-pity. At barely more than 200 pages, Unfettered is not especially long, but it starts to feel interminable.
Wait, it's that short? I didn't realize that.
It's extremely short. It's a 6-ish hour audiobook because I literally listened to half of it last night.
And does it stack up to the reviews? Were you more impressed than those reviewers? What was your take?
I will spare our listeners my full recounting of my takeaways. I feel like this is what old Twitter was good at, is like live tweeting your reactions to stuff like this. And now I just send myself Slacks, which feels not as fun. But I think the line that resonates for me as a reader or listener in this case is the quote unquote closed loop of self-pity. There's so many sections where, and I've never experienced depression in the way that he describes it. So maybe this is just my naivete, but like there's so many parts where he just recounts slights, things that happened to him or he experienced. And I take his word that they're his truth, but I don't keep a record of wrongs that people have done to me or that I think that they've done in the way that John Fetterman clearly does. Like literally things from early childhood that he feels like still deeply affect and offend him as a man in his 50s, I think.
It seems like maybe he needed to write a diss track instead of a memoir.
Yeah. I mean, but he kind of does that too, actually. We will get to those chapters.
That's interesting to me that he's drawing from his childhood because, like, I've read, like, the synopsis and all, and I know this memoir is, you know, talking about his career in public service, the stroke that he suffered from, and then his depression. Was not expecting stories from his childhood.
Yeah, and I didn't get through all of it. Like I said, I listened to the first half or so. He does not read it. He reads the prologue. Mallory, to your point about his speech patterns, I assume that was probably recorded in the last few months, you know, leading up to the release. It does sound similar to how he sounded in The View. He's clearly reading. I mean, obviously it's his own work, but an actor does the rest of it. The chapters, though, about Governor Josh Shapiro are a rich text. They are fascinating.
Isn't one of them called The Shapiro Affair?
It is, the second one. But there's two chapters that really do a deep dive into his relationship with Shapiro. The first one is sort of like the setup chapter. And the second one is like, here's where everything went bad.
Ooh, spill.
Okay, so the breakup, he traces it all back to when they were both on the State Board of Pardons. So this was when Fetterman was lieutenant governor, Shapiro was attorney general. So it was the two of them plus three other members, 5-member board. And in case you don't know, the Board of Pardons requires a unanimous vote for someone to get out of prison. So these are people who, for whatever reason, have been convicted. They have no chance of parole. The Board of Pardons literally is their last chance to have an opportunity at clemency.
Right.
And he sets a lot of this up by saying, like, one of the primary charges that they saw people convicted of was felony murder. That is a huge problem, which he's right about, by the way, if you have not read up on that. A lot of states have abolished it, but it can convict people of murder who were not present for a crime, did not kill anyone, sometimes had no idea a murder was even possible. Like, literally, he cites an example of somebody who was out of the country when a crime occurred that led to someone dying, and they were convicted of life in prison without parole. So he is right that this is a major problem in Pennsylvania. Once again, somehow we are hot on the heels of John Oliver, the comedian on HBO, because he did a takedown of felony murder this past week, totally unrelated to Fetterman's book. So I feel very well versed in this at the moment.
And interestingly, just a very quick side note, our state Supreme Court is actually set to take up a case around mandatory life sentences for felony murder in Pennsylvania. It's not exactly clear like when we'll know anything related to that, but that is, you know, working its way through the court right now.
Yeah. So with the Board of Pardons that Shapiro and Fetterman are on, if any one of the 5 of them say no, then that person stays in prison, no chance of release. So this is, like I said, the last chance. Fetterman writes that for every case they heard, he personally believes that both he and Josh Shapiro were voting with their hearts, like making the best decision that they could. But that Shapiro was perhaps a bit more political, more calculated, like more aware of the potential professional risk if he lets someone out of jail that then reoffends in some way. And Fetterman says, like, he's maybe right to have those feelings because it has taken down political careers in the past, even here in Pennsylvania. But that he was personally offended by that. Like, he took it to heart every time he read one of these like applications. The corrections department had to sign off on it before it got to them. They often had letters from wardens and other people being like, these are great human beings. They made a mistake once, or they never made a mistake at all, but we convicted them anyway. Please let them out. So they heard dozens and dozens of cases together. And he says they disagreed like a fair amount about all of this.
From the reviews that I've read, it sounds like the two of them like clashed in particular over this one case that was involving a pair of brothers where like both John Fetterman and law enforcement officials thought they should get released and that initially Shapiro did not.
Correct. So Fetterman gives like all of this background info to build up to this like big case, right? And he says he got so heated. So Shapiro, I guess, like denied it. And then they reapplied. Shapiro was like hung up on some details that Fetterman contends was not important at all. So this led to Fetterman calling Shapiro a quote unquote fucking asshole on a hot microphone,
Oopsies.
not realizing that the microphone was hot. And so he calls this private meeting and quote unquote all but said that he would run for governor just to make Shapiro's life harder because an election was coming up and it would be contested. Like it would cost Shapiro all this money and time to have to deal with a challenger like Fetterman.
It would also cost Fetterman time and money.
It would,
like,
but that's how strongly he felt about this. He was like, if you don't vote to let these people out, as I believe you should, then I will run for governor just to make your life tough.
A bad reason to run for governor.
I don't love it. I'm not going to lie. I guess they had some kind of conversations. This is the way he presents it in the book, that he knew Shapiro was going to run for governor and he wanted to run for Senate. They knew this about each other. But in this private meeting, he was like, I will ruin your world. I want to take you down if you do not play this one right. So anyway, he tells the Inquirer some portion of this because that was a private meeting, right? So it gets in the public record. And after that, Shapiro does, in fact, vote how Fetterman wants him to, and this pair of brothers were released.
I don't think this story makes Fetterman look good.
The felony murder part, that part, I think he comes correct. Everything that comes after...
Right. I could see this like very differently. Like this is something I was advocating for and this is the reason why like Shapiro and I fell out, but then he sticks all this stuff and like then I threatened to be annoying and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like politics isn't like this, right? Like people meet behind closed doors and like make threats at each other, like or like try to negotiate in some way. I think that's the nicer term for it. But like I get that. I'm not trying to be like too Pollyanna, but also is that how it's happening? It just makes me kind of sad.
But I did see that like he's kind of trying to land on like a softer note with Shapiro. By the end of the book, he says, I sincerely wish him the best, gives a couple compliments, says he like fondly remembers the days when there were nobody's trying to climb a ladder, even if we no longer speak.
I feel like that ending, once again, is him leaning into the drama.
Maybe. I do think he seems to be trying to take the high road in a lot of this. But I also understand from like those reviewers you were talking about, Mallory, like that it's hard to separate this book without having like viewing it through a lens of clinical depression because it has so many hallmarks of being in that mental space while thinking about and analyzing the events of your own life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And I haven't read the full book or as much as you have, Megan, but I've gone through some excerpts.
I haven't read the whole thing either. We'll see.
Yeah. The one thing I did find interesting was, he says in hindsight he should have quit the Senate race after his stroke. I wonder how people feel reading that now.
I mean, in the prologue, so the part that's in his own voice, he's literally talking about sitting on a bench by the Rankin Bridge and thinking about jumping off, that would be a good place to end it all. Like, that's the prologue. So I imagine, I haven't gotten to that portion of his Senate experience yet, but I imagine that's coming later in the book. Like, how do you drop that and then not revisit it,
Well, and I guess that kind of brings us back to that Washington Post review I mentioned up top. The reviewer there, who actually kind of complimented the storytelling in the book, but she said it's unintentionally a rather persuasive argument that Fetterman may lack the fortitude, temperament, and commitment to represent Pennsylvania's 13 million residents in the U.S. Senate. So that, in a lot of ways, this book is an argument for why he should not be in office.
Well, all of that said, Fetterman was not the only lawmaker from our region who got a national media hit this week. In case you missed it, Chris DeLuzio, he's a Democratic representative in the U.S. House from here in Pittsburgh, good buds with our county executive, Sarah Innamorato. He was on The Daily Show this week in advance of Veterans Day, talking about a major act that he and New York Representative Pat Ryan got passed. Jon Stewart actually lobbied for it in front of Congress. So
interesting.
The three of them were like chatting about why this is so important, but it did kind of go into some of that healthcare piece. They were lightly criticizing national Democrats. I kind of wish they'd been a little more forceful with that. Jon Stewart is not shy about it. But anyway, they were talking about just how difficult it has been for veterans who serve their country to get access to things like becoming citizens or healthcare benefits and things like that. And saying like, if it's so hard for veterans, it is exponentially harder for normal Americans, like regular Americans, and just all kind of collectively yes-anding and lamenting the experience of being an American who needs healthcare right now. So I won't say it's an uplifting interview, but it's out there if you want to go watch it.
Well, let's close with something a little more uplifting. It is time for trivia, and this week's question is about none other than beloved Pittsburgher Fred Rogers.
Sophia, where's trivia time? Trivia time.
Trivia time.
Trivia time.
So, you cannot picture Fred Rogers without picturing him in a cardigan. Every episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood opened with him putting one on. But who knit his famous cardigans?
Oh, I know this. And I didn't even grow up watching too much Mr. Rogers.
I didn't either. I just think it's the sweetest fact. We'll tell Jens when we get back. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Pittsburgh Opera and their first ever performances of Fellow Travelers. The opera takes place during the 1950s, the McCarthy era, and a young college graduate shows up to D.C., eager to join the State Department. But this is also during the Lavender Scare, and our main character falls in love with another man. Fellow Travelers is based on the book by Thomas Mallon, and the opera is quickly becoming a contemporary classic. You can catch Fellow Travelers at the Byham Theater for one weekend only. There are only 3 performances from November 14th through the 16th. The tickets start at just $20, and there are a whole bunch of discounts. So for kids, for students, for seniors, for military, and even just for big groups, this is such an important story, especially at this moment. So grab your friends and head downtown for Fellow Travelers. Learn more at pittsburghopera.org/citycast. Today's show is brought to you by City Theater. Confession, I have never read Little Women. I know it's a classic. I have heard all about the March sisters, Jo and Beth and Meg and Amy. The one literally has my name. And of course, their creator, author Louisa May Alcott. I really meant to do it. It just never happened. But now, maybe my actual introduction to the story will get to be a little more local, more Pittsburgh, because City Theater has co-commissioned and produced its own version that they say blends the heartwarming coming-of-age story you love, the empowerment, the family bonds, the resilience, but also the very creation of the literary masterpiece itself, with Alcott at the center of it. It's a new adaptation of a beloved classic and a world premiere, all from playwright Lauren Gunderson, who brought us The Revolutionists and the Christmas at Pemberley series that y'all have been raving about to me for a few years now. City Theater says it's perfect for the holidays, a total celebration of sisterhood and aspiration. So grab your loved ones and look for performances November 15th through December 7th. Learn more at citytheatercompany.org.
Okay, Megan, Sophia, who would like to do the honors and tell us who knit Mr. Rogers' cardigans?
Sophia, you're up.
Yes, I'm going to take this one. I haven't gotten a trivia right in a while. His mom.
Yes, his mom knit the sweaters that became so iconic and so inextricably linked with his image. And the reason that I actually chose this trivia question this week is because the Children's Museum just kicked off its annual Mr. Rogers Neighborhood Sweater Drive. This is a thing it does every year. So now through December 18th, you can donate new or gently used sweaters to them, and they'll distribute them to nonprofits across our region that work with families and kids. They say they take sweaters of every size, but children's sweaters are especially needed. And there's a bunch of different drop-off sites you can go to. We'll put a link in our show notes with all of them. But if you drop a sweater directly at the Children's Museum during hours when they're open, you can get a free pass for a future visit. So you can do a good deed and get something really nice out of it.
Oh, that's really wonderful. If I knew they did this, I've forgotten. But I think that's a great use, especially for folks like you and me, Mallory, who have small children outgrowing things really, really quickly. If they are still in great shape, this is a perfect opportunity to make sure they find a next great home.
Yes, 100%.
Y'all, I know we just finished talking about Fetterman, but he's in the hospital now.
What?
So I am looking at a screenshot of Twitter posted on Blue Sky, and now I'm going to
That's a
CBS. And Okay, so some of this information is coming from his spokesperson, and this person is explaining that Fetterman fell near his home. So this is happening in Braddock. He was taken to a hospital in Pittsburgh just in case. I guess doctors found that he had a ventricular fibrillation flare-up. As we're recording, he is still in the hospital, but is doing okay. There are minor injuries to his face, though. So I don't know if maybe he just got some cuts. I'm unsure what that's going to look like, but...
Yeah, I'm looking at something now. It said he was walking by his home. He actually talks about that a lot in his book, about how his safe space to walk is along the Gap Trail beside his house. I bet it was there. I hope it doesn't mess up his safe space. I feel like everybody needs one of those,
Yeah, and reminder, John Fetterman has a heart condition that's been talked about pretty widely over the last few years. So I guess this continues to be a week where there is a lot going on in his life.
Oh my God, the statement. If you thought my face looked bad before, wait until you see it now. John, no.
Okay, so we know he's okay. He seems to have a sense of humor about it. So
I don't know what to think of this self-deprecation stuff sometimes, y'all. Okay, we will turn now to our other senator, Senator Dave McCormick, the Republican. He's been making headlines for a video that he made telling New Yorkers that they should move to Pennsylvania. Y'all, I have intentionally avoided this. You both had very strong reactions about it earlier in the week. I've been saving myself for Friday.
Yeah, so this ad is specifically targeted towards people who are worried about Zoran Mamdani's vision for New York City, mayor-elect. Really gross ad, boo Islamophobia. It'll become obvious in a second.
Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani will be elected the next mayor of New York, New York.
Are you worried about your future in New York? Because I have just the place for you. Pennsylvania, where America was born. We've got mountains, winning football teams, world-class universities, and no one is going to make you feel unwelcome for loving America, loving freedom, and loving your God.
God, talk about punching down. Ugh.
Yeah, this video made me feel all icky inside. It starts with a bunch of headlines about Mamdani, pictures of him. There's a shot of the Cathedral of Learning when he's talking about Pennsylvania's world-class universities.
A lot about the sports teams, but he shows Pittsburgh falling out of the end zone and then Philly winning a Super Bowl, which is I caught that. I caught that, sir. Thank you.
Isn't McCormick supposed to be a Western PA guy? I don't know.
In theory.
I have jokingly sent this to several of my friends who live in New York and were very excited about Mamdani's win, saying, I have yet to convince you to move to Pittsburgh. Perhaps Senator Dave McCormick might. Hasn't gotten a lot of traction.
Well, government is reopened now. Fetterman, McCormick, get us health care.
Also, speaking of healthcare, actually, we're going to talk now a little bit about the Post-Gazette and the strike that's been happening there for 3 years. It is our nation's longest strike at this point because workers represented by the Communication Workers of America, that's the local union's parent organization, they declared victory this week. They said the strike is over, we won. And I keep seeing people post about that. But unfortunately, if you dig deeper than the headline, the strike is not over. And I think we need to talk about what actually happened.
Yeah. So first, just a little bit of background. This strike started in October 2022. Production workers started it off. They went on strike over rising healthcare premiums. There's our healthcare transition. And by the terms of the union contract, if any one of 5 unions at the Post-Gazette went on strike, then they all had to.
And one of those unions, I would say, has been a lot louder than the others. I moved here right after the strike started, and I heard a lot from the Writers Guild, just kind of announcing they were on strike, asking for support, all that kind of stuff.
And that's the reporters, editors, designers, people who make the newspaper behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I think it's worth kind of going back to those early days, too, because it was so complicated and it was, I think, really challenging experience for a lot of people. The Guild members, Post-Gazette employees, writ large, whether they were part of the union or not, they had 48 hours notice when this strike was supposed to take place. They took a vote to authorize their strike. It was very close, 38 in favor, 36 against striking. And people I knew at the time, some who ultimately did go on strike, some who did not, they have all recounted to me over the years at this point a really frustrating experience with that moment because, they're all really smart people. And at the time, they were asking the Communications Workers of America, the CWA, what happens if this strike happens and the CWA didn't know yet? That what's our strategy to make sure that like there's minimal damage to striking workers, to make sure that this goes our way? And the CWA didn't have any guidance. So I think it was really fraught from the start.
That makes a lot of sense. I could not imagine trying to decide if I had a strike or not without knowing, like, is there money? So not a lot of notice. Anyway, jumping ahead to now, 4 of those 5 unions have settled their strikes. Most of those unions actually just dissolved because this process, like, just broke them down. So the Writers Guild is all that there is left of striking workers.
Yeah, and they're the ones who the CWA has been saying won this week. So what they won was a court decision that says the PG acted improperly, negotiated in bad faith, declared an impasse. A judge actually wrote that guild members would have been afforded more rights working without a contract than by accepting all of PG Publishing's proposals. I'm not going to get into all of the details here, but the whole court filing is only a few pages long, and it is a really good summation of the whole thing. So we will drop a link in our show notes. I highly encourage you to read it. But now the Post-Gazette has been ordered to restore healthcare benefits that are identical to what employees had in 2017 when their last union contract expired, because they went on strike in 2022, but they had not had a contract. And there had been this, fight over healthcare and benefits since 2017.
Yeah. And I mean, the paper, the officials there contend that part of this ruling, the healthcare benefits, that's not really something they can control because it's not set entirely by an employer. Like if all of us have gone through open enrollment, it's really difficult to have healthcare in this country that's not controlled by your employer. And more often than not, it is up to the insurance provider to tell you what they want to make available, and you try to negotiate the best thing that you can for your employees. In our region, that might be Aetna, Cigna, Highmark, UPMC, like these kinds of companies. But the insurance companies are the ones holding all the cards. So to tell any employer, in this case the newspaper, you have to restore an identical plan is, the paper says, an impossible task. Like that's not something that's within their ability to even do.
And the ruling also says the PG needs to reimburse striking workers for, the years of medical expenses. But I think this gets really confusing to figure out because about 26 people are still on strike. But at the beginning, it was 120 people. So who exactly does it apply to? Everyone, just the people still on strike? I don't know how they're going to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who even say they left the paper way before the strike started, but after that 2017 date when the contract expired. And several of them seem to fully expect that they are going to get some amount of reimbursed money from all of this, that they might be eligible for that. But I don't know how you calculate this. Medical expenses for 26 people over 3 years is obviously very different than back pay for hundreds of people over 8 years. So I'm very curious to see someone break that down at some point.
The paper is owned by super, super wealthy people, though. So whatever the number is, they could pay it. Yeah. The Blocks, I don't feel bad for them needing to have to pay up.
Yeah. JR and Alan Block own the paper and have all the controlling interest of it. They also own the Toledo Blade. I don't feel bad for them. It's very clear who the villains are in this story.
But they're actually issuing a threat, essentially. They are saying that, because of these 2 things from the court ruling, restoring benefits, which, they say they don't have the ability to do, and paying back years of medical expenses for, as of now, I guess, an unclear number of people. They're saying that if the court ruling stands, they won't be able to afford this, and they will just have to shut down the paper. A 240-year-old newspaper will fold.
Yeah, I mean, and the wild thing to me is that in their statement, clarifying that, Mallory, they accuse the union of trying to, quote unquote, take their ball and go home, while also saying that if they don't get their way, that they're just going to close. That is the definition of take my ball and go home.
It really is.
It kind of reminds me of when U.S. Steel was threatening to leave Pittsburgh if the Nippon Steel sale didn't go through. I feel like we have these local institutions who are really saying, do what I say or I'm out of here.
Or else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our sports teams have done it too. The Penguins did it 20 years ago. But I think the difference here is that U.S. Steel and Nippon and also the Penguins, they're money-making ventures, whereas newspapers these days pretty much all lose money. So however you feel about the Block's stance in this fight or in general, they have been willing, at least up until this point, up until now apparently, to spend money for Pittsburgh to have a paper.
You know, it is worth mentioning around all of this that the Post-Gazette, they have won a few court decisions along the way because this has been a multi-year process, as we said.
Yeah, I don't think it could have continued like it has if they hadn't won at least a couple things. And it seems like maybe part of the issue is that the union may not have had the best legal counsel through all of this. Like in one ruling from February, a U.S. District Court judge basically says the Guild's attorney is not good at law.
Eek.
And at least in her courtroom, that he was actively hurting their case.
Well, kind of looking ahead to what's next, unfortunately unclear.
Yeah.
So the Guild, CWA, keep saying they won, but, you know, when the striking workers are quoted by local media, they say it's far from over and nothing's been agreed on. The Post-Gazette will appeal again. They've been doing a lot of appeals, so still the same level of court at the Third Circuit, but a larger panel of judges. So they could reconsider the case, but that appeals process could take months. And the Post-Gazette could also take this all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But a WESA story citing a legal analyst said the chances that the Supreme Court would take it are extremely low. And if they took it, the earliest they would hear it is fall 2026.
Yeah, and I mean, if you read all of these stories in totality, I think it's very clear that like Post-Gazette officials and the striking workers, like everyone is saying, at least when they're quoted in their statements, that they want the strike to end. They want this standoff to stop and for people to be able to go back to work. But if that is true, my summation from reading all these court decisions and talking to folks who are on strike and also people who are still working is that maybe the best way to make that happen is unfortunately old-fashioned bargaining. I say unfortunate because that has not seemed to work over the last 8 years, has not resulted in much. If you want to check it out, we'll also link to the strike paper about this decision, the Pittsburgh Union Progress, because they're reporting, unlike their parent union, the CWA, I think is much more measured, less of a big win and more of a step forward. But when I talked to them this week, they said that more stuff is happening behind the scenes and that they remain hopeful that the end really is in sight, that it won't take this protracted years-long additional court battle. And I really hope they're right.
Yeah, I think the best thing for the city is for all of this to get resolved and
the paper not to close.
Yes.
Let's not do that.
You know, when most of us want to learn a new language, it's not because we're dying to memorize grammar tables or ace a quiz. It's because we actually want to speak it out in the real world with real people. And that's what Babbel is great at, getting you there. Fast. Hey, it's Michael Zibiak, Chief Revenue Officer here at CityCast. My daughter's a senior in high school, and after graduation, we're taking a father-daughter trip to Spain. And right now, my Spanish is, let's just say, very high school level. Shout out to Senior Patty from Sayasa High School. You tried. When we're in Spain, I'd love to do more than just ask where the bathroom is. I want to be able to chat with locals, order tapas, and actually connect. Not just read the menu and point. So I'm starting with Babbel. It's all about small steps, big wins, and it's super easy to fit into my life. Honestly, with how busy things get here at CityCast, I love that Babbel's bite-sized, 10-minute lessons fit right into my day, between meetings or over my morning coffee. I'm excited to pick up some real-world Spanish before we go, so we can experience Spain like locals, not tourists. Doesn't that sound better? Right now, Babbel's got a special deal for our listeners. Get up to 55% off your subscription at babbel.com/citycast. That's BABBEL.com/citycast for up to 55% off. Rules and restrictions may apply. Gracias and adios.
All right, time for one of our favorite parts of the week, hearing from our CityCast Pittsburgh neighbors.
Yes, today I am bringing you a shout out from Susan S. She is shouting out Steel Goat Marketplace. This is in Penn Hills. And this is a market I have been meaning to check out because it has over 100 small businesses and vendors who sell their goods there. So it must be such a cool collection. They have home goods, vintage stuff, plants, jewelry, so much more. They also have a bunch of events and on Fridays. So today they'll be doing a holiday market. And this is recurring on Fridays for the next few weeks. So good time to do some holiday shopping. Go get your gifts. So thank you so much, Susan, for sharing.
Oh my God, I'm looking at their website. There's something called the Steel Goat Gazette.
Aww.
This is so cute.
Well, if you have another gift shop you love, any other business, nonprofit you think people need to know about, you should join our CityCast Pittsburgh Neighbor Program. Send us your shout out. We will read it right here. Plus, it'll be in our newsletter. You can join today at membership.citycast.fm. And you get a bunch of other cool perks like ad-free listening and chances to show up to members-only events and hang out with us. So one more time, that is membership.citycast.fm.
And thank you again, Susan. We have a whole roundup on our website of some of our favorite gift shops, like places to buy things locally here in Pittsburgh. So we will add the Steel Goat Marketplace to our roundup. Thank you again. We will move on now to wins, losses, things to know. This has been just such a wild news week.
Yeah,
yes.
At the federal, state, and local level. So big state news. After 4 months, we finally have a state budget.
Still wasn't a record, though. We've been worse than this.
Yes, this was 4 months late. What's the record? I always forget.
I think it went into January under Governor Tom Wolf.
Okay,
it can go into a whole separate calendar year.
Yeah, I think we were butting. I can't remember if he'd done the budget address that year, like for the next year, or if it was right before that.
Wild.
It was really
that's
close.
Weird.
Okay, so not quite. We didn't break any records this year, but still 4 months past deadline.
No, national broke records, not the state.
Yes. But so we've got a budget now, $50.1 billion, so more than last year. There were compromises, of course, so some big ones. Democrats agreed to pull out of this multi-state compact that caps carbon emissions from power plants. So climate activists not very happy about that compromise. And then Republicans agreed to more funding for public education, among other things.
Which is required because a court found that the way we fund education is unconstitutional. This does not solve that problem, but it's at least a few more dollars.
Yeah. And then I think notably, this budget doesn't include additional funding for public transit. We have talked so much about that, how it had been a real sticking point in budget negotiations. It was a big priority for Democrats, but another year without trying to figure out some long-term sustainable funding solution for transit.
And Pittsburghers for Public Transit, they proposed a funding solution. They are obviously not happy that that wasn't, put into consideration this time around, but they're always doing great advocacy work. So if you're interested, definitely check their org out, figure out ways you can plug in, maybe help next year.
Yeah. And another thing to know, so this one on the city level, the local level, we have a police chief. Mayor-elect Corey O'Connor announced his pick, Jason Lando, yesterday. I am so proud. I called it last week.
Yes, we have the receipts.
You knew it.
He was a top pick in 2023 when Mayor Ed Gainey selected our last guy instead, who then, of course, left us to pursue NCAA basketball refereeing. That sentence never doesn't feel weird every time I say it. But Lando was here in Pittsburgh previously for 21 years. And literally everyone I know who watches the Bureau closely, whether they work there or not, like they're thrilled about this choice. Council does have to sign off on it once Corey O'Connor officially takes office next year. But one more gig that we now know about. Well, it's mostly for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, the question of police chief had been such a big part of the primary campaign. So now that's been resolved.
Yeah. And if you missed it last week on our Friday show, we talked about a bunch of other people that are in Corey O'Connor's orbit right now and may or may not have a job in the new administration. We're watching out for those. A loss now, UPMC.
Yes, UPMC is closing down their narcotics treatment program. So this treats people with drug addictions. They have a clinic in Wilkinsburg, and at that spot, they're able to give people methadone, and that's used to help people get off opioids. But UPMC wasn't able to renew their lease there or find like a new spot they felt that this program could operate well. So they are just closing it down completely, which to me is like wild. You think somewhere in the city or like outside of, the Pittsburgh metro city proper area, you'd find a place to make it work.
Yeah, UPMC owns like an enormous amount of property here in Pittsburgh and in our region. I think this one was in Wilkinsburg, so not technically the city proper, but still.
Yeah, and this is going to hurt a lot of people because about 500 patients show up to this clinic. So this clinic is going to close at the end of the month. So patients have only a couple weeks to find new care. Like UPMC says they're doing referrals and stuff, but you have to always deal with questions of insurance. Like this is part of people's schedules. Can you travel to a new spot? So that really sucks. No plans, or at least no word for UPMC on whether this could potentially reopen in the future.
one of the things that feels so tough about this is that, like, you don't really want any additional barriers put in place for people to get this type of care and treatment. And I know, Sophia, I was reading the same article I'm sure you looked at from KDKA, where they talked to a patient who was really worried about relapsing. They talked to someone who'd been going there for more than 15 years just as part of their treatment routine. And so having, a couple weeks notice to figure something else out is really rough.
Yeah. Well, we will finish this week with a win. I think this is a win. I guess we're saying goodbye to a couple of things as part of it. But Pittsburgh International Airport has finally told us when they're opening the new building, the long-awaited confirmation of when it was coming.
Yes, Tuesday. Everyone put it in your calendar because if you do want to check out those changes, reminder that a lot of the updates are before security. So if you're feeling extra nebby, you could poke around without an airline ticket.
That's true. And there's a lot of extra parking now. So theoretically, all of us could get there. I'm sure portions of it are more expensive. I have not yet peeped the parking, like the parking pricing. That's hard to say.
If it wasn't like an entire road trip just to get to the airport, maybe I would consider this.
But Mallory, don't you have a flight coming up?
I do have a flight coming up, so I will report back once I've gotten to see the new terminal in all its glory.
So if you're flying out this weekend, say goodbye for us to the train, the airport train, because that's going away, and the T-Rex. Bye, Rexy.
They're getting rid of the T-Rex?
Y'all didn't know that? We've talked about this so many times.
I remember the train. I assumed the T-Rex was going to stay because where else would it go?
It feels like the most critical piece of airport infrastructure.
Where are they going to store it? Can I have it? Is this going to be at the airport auction? I'll be there next year.
No, I think the Natural History Museum just gets to take it back.
Where are they going to put it? Their dinosaur room is so full.
I don't know. I mean, it's also it's a model. Like, that's not a real dinosaur sitting there.
Well, some of the ones in the rooms are also models, right?
Well, the skull of the T-Rex, the one T-Rex, is a model because it's the oldest ever found or whatever. So they keep the real one in the basement so that scientists can actually study it without having to go through the painstaking process of removing its head every single time a scientist is in town. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize y'all didn't know the T-Rex was going away.
But also, I jokingly sent people that Dave McCormick video telling them to come to Pittsburgh, but I legitimately tell people to travel here because our airport has a dinosaur in it, and who else can say that? And now we can't say that.
We can't say that anymore. Bye, Rexy. Bye. That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji, All the Kimonos, Mars, Five Dime Fellas, Chanterelle, Luke Brindley, and Hip Color, with additional music from epidemicsound.com. Mallory Falk is our executive producer. Sophia Lo produces the show. Francesca DeBecco writes our newsletter. And I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, y'all. Look, Tennessee is a dumpster fire in different ways, but their sunshine laws and their paperwork situation, 1,000% better.
Guess what? CityCast has some news. I'm Sean McPherson, the host of CityCast Twin Cities.
And I'm Jane Sihu, and I'm the host of CityCast Seattle. Hey, if you have a friend in one of our cities, can you text them for us?
Yeah, something, simple like, hey, how's that rash doing? And do you listen to podcasts? Because I have one you're definitely going to like. After that, tell them that CityCast has helped you become more informed, more involved, and more connected to your amazing city.
We're going to help that person you know in Seattle who's been trying to make friends.
And we're also going to do that for that guy you only kind of knew in college who moved back to the Twin Cities after graduation.
Don't we all have that guy?
Yeah, and usually that guy is named Todd.
So did you text him yet?
Jane, let's just wait a minute. We don't want to rush anybody. We'll do a little small talk. How's everything going in Seattle?
Beautiful, beautiful. Fall leaves popping. How about Twin Cities?
Today, beautiful and sunshiny in St. Paul. Okay, Jane, I bet they are done texting by now, and I just want to remind them, hey, you, please tell that friend to subscribe to CityCast Twin Cities or Seattle, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or if you don't want to text them and you're really just on Instagram sending them DMs all the time with funny videos, send them a DM of our latest videos. You can find us at CityCast Twin Cities or CityCast Seattle on Instagram. Thanks.